They always laughed after she walked by. Whispers, eye rolls, fake coughs hiding cruel giggles. Every morning, as Alina stepped through the heavy glass doors of the sleek urban building that bore someone else's name, the air inside shifted. Not with respect, but with that same cruel mockery that had haunted her for years. They called her Monster Face. Never to her directly, of course, but the name clung to her like the heavy makeup she used to mask her birthmark. A dark red patch that stretched from her left cheek to her temple, something no cream or surgery had managed to erase. She was just the front desk girl, or so they thought. Always early, always quiet, always keeping to herself. To them she was barely worth knowing. Just the woman with the messed-up face and second-hand shoes. No one asked where she went for lunch. No one remembered her birthday, and absolutely no one knew her last name. That was exactly how she wanted it, because Alina Bishop, the one they ridiculed, was also Alina Bellevue. As in Bellevue Industries, the very company whose marble floors they walked on, whose elevators they rode up, and whose paychecks landed in their accounts every 1st and 15th. She had inherited the empire from her grandfather, Henry Bellevue, a ruthless businessman known for building corporations the way others built houses, cold, fast, and strong. He'd always told her, "Power is wasted on the obvious. Disguise it, and you'll see who deserves your favor." He taught her to listen more than speak, to blend in before she stood out, and most importantly, to watch how people treat the ones they think are beneath them. So for the last 10 months, Alina had shown up not as the CEO in heels and tailored suits, but as the woman who took coffee orders, signed for packages, and got called Monster Face behind her back. There were some who didn't laugh. Mrs. Janine from cleaning always brought her an extra muffin in the morning. Marcus from IT once offered to fix her phone without charge. But they were the rare exceptions in a building filled with polished, perfect people with expensive haircuts and ugly hearts. The worst of them all was Darren Cole, Director of Operations. Fake smile, real venom. He was the kind who thought charm was a currency and cruelty a secret weapon. He'd once said loudly in the break room, "If I had a face like that, I'd sue my parents." The others had laughed, loudly. Alina had just walked past, her tray of coffees trembling in her hands, but what none of them knew was that the board had just approved her motion for executive leadership restructuring. A quiet but explosive shake-up that would be announced in 2 days. She didn't plan to fire people. That would be too easy. No, Alina wanted something more educational. Let them stew. Let them squirm when the truth came out. Let them remember every cruel word they'd whispered when the monster turned out to be the queen, and she had a plan. One that started with a surprise employee appreciation event she herself announced that morning. Using the building's intercom for the first time, her voice echoed through the entire 38-floor skyscraper. "Good morning, team. We're hosting a mandatory appreciation ceremony this Friday at noon. Dress to impress." She ended with a soft, cold smile that no one saw. It was time. Time for the masks to come off. Theirs, not hers. They always laughed after she walked by. Whispers, smirks, those not-so-subtle side-eyes. It didn't matter if she was carrying their mail or juggling coffee trays. Alina could feel it, like poison in the air, like needles in her skin. The nickname had started about 6 months ago, and it spread like mold. Monster Face. 2 words, cruel as hell, spoken behind her back, but loud enough to slice right through her soul. Her birthmark was the reason. A deep red splash across the left side of her face, shaped almost like a flame. She'd had it since she was a baby. Doctors tried lasers, creams, you name it. Nothing worked. She stopped hoping around age 17. Makeup could only do so much. Some days she covered it up. Other days she didn't bother. People stared either way. But what hurt wasn't strangers. It was the ones she worked beside every damn day. They didn't even try to be kind. She was the front desk girl, the one who signed for packages and watered the lobby plants. No one cared to ask her name. She was invisible, and when she wasn't invisible, she was a punchline. It wasn't just the name. It was the little things, too. The way her coffee orders came back wrong on purpose, the fake pity smiles, the snide comments disguised as jokes. Once, someone left a sticky note on her desk that said, Beauty is only skin deep. Thank God for that. She'd found it after lunch, crumpled it up, thrown it away without a word. Alina had grown used to silence. What they didn't know, what none of them even suspected, was that the quiet girl behind the desk was also the real owner of Bellevue Industries, the very company they all worked for. Her full name was Alina Bellevue Bishop, granddaughter of the late Henry Bellevue, the self-made tycoon who built the empire from the ground up and passed it on to her before his death last year. But she hadn't just walked in and claimed her crown. Henry's will came with conditions, one of which required Alina to spend a year working in the company in a non-executive role, observing how people behaved when they thought no one important was watching. It was his way of teaching her something that couldn't be learned in business school. Character shows itself when there's nothing to gain, so she agreed. She dropped her last name from the company record, used her mother's maiden name, and took the job at reception. People assumed she got the job through some charity hire. They made up stories. Some said she was poor, some thought she was mentally slow. No one asked the truth, and that's exactly how she wanted it. She took the bus to work every day, even though she owned 3 cars and a penthouse overlooking the harbor. She ate lunch in the break room quietly, while the others gossiped and mocked her as if she couldn't hear. She made notes, mental ones, not for revenge, not at first. But things changed. It wasn't one moment. It was a slow build, like rust eating away at steel. She saw managers who bullied their teams, co-workers who kissed up and kicked down, department heads who stole ideas from interns and took credit in board meetings. And then there was Darren Cole, the golden boy of operations. If there was a devil in disguise, it was Darren. He was smooth, slick, always laughing, always performing. Everyone thought he was charming. Upper management loved him. He knew all. The right people said all the right things. But when no one important was around, he was venom. Darren once told another employee right in front of Alina, "You know that girl at the front? If she worked for Disney, they'd cast her as the villain." Everyone laughed. Alina didn't blink. She just turned back to her computer and typed out the memo her assistant had sent her that morning. Final board approval received. Executive restructuring goes live next Friday. That was 6 days ago, and now on a calm Monday morning, Alina stood behind the reception desk, staring at her reflection in the glass of the front doors. Her face looked tired, yes, but focused. Behind her, the lobby buzzed with usual noise, phones ringing, people passing through with fake smiles and overpriced shoes. She picked up the intercom phone, the one she'd never used before, and pressed the code that sent her voice to all 38 floors. "Good morning, team," she said, her voice smooth but cold. "We're hosting a mandatory appreciation ceremony this Friday at noon. Dress to impress." That was all. No explanation, no emotion, just enough to catch their attention. She hung up the phone and waited. By lunchtime, the rumors had already begun. "Did you hear about the mandatory event?" "Who's running it?" "HR didn't say anything." "Must be another rebranding stunt. You know how the execs love their PR fluff." Alina smiled to herself as she walked past a group of mid-level managers whispering near the elevators. They didn't even notice her. Not really. Just the monster face again. Let them talk, let them dress up, let them think they're the stars of the show, because on Friday, the masks would come off, and so would theirs. By Tuesday morning, the building was buzzing louder than usual. The kind of buzz that came with uncertainty, with people suddenly sitting straighter and checking their calendars twice. The email blast had followed the intercom announcement, no sender name, just leadership office stamped in the corner, and a subject line that read, "Mandatory Friday 12 p.m. appreciation ceremony. Formal attire required." Nobody liked vague instructions, especially not in an office like Bellevue Industries. Everyone there played politics like chess. Every move counted, every word mattered. So when something as unusual as a surprise, mandatory gathering hit their inboxes without context, it set off alarms. Subtle ones, but alarms nonetheless. In the break room, whispers curled through the steam of microwaved lunches. "You think it's layoffs?" "No, it said appreciation, didn't it?" "Appreciate us before cutting us loose, maybe. I bet it's about Darren. You know he's being considered for VP. Alina sipped her lukewarm tea at her usual table in the corner, pretending not to listen. But she caught every word. Darren's name popped up more than once. He was the office darling. Always dressed sharp, always speaking smooth, always pretending to care. He had a way of making people feel small without saying anything obviously cruel. That was his gift. A little smirk here, a condescending bless your heart there. Death by 1,000 polite cuts, and ever since the announcement, he'd been walking around like he already knew something no one else did. Even made a loud comment that morning. By the elevators, I have a feeling something big is coming Friday. Just saying. Followed by that smug half-laugh that made people nod along, even if they didn't get the joke. Alina had to bite the inside of her cheek to stop herself from reacting. She returned to her desk just as the morning rush slowed. Phones were quiet. Delivery guys came and went. A few interns passed by on their way to a presentation, one of them giving her a quick smile. Not mean, just nervous. She gave a nod back. It was moments like that, the interns, the janitors, the assistants, that reminded her why she hadn't just waltzed into the boardroom and cleaned house from day one. There were good people in the company, buried under the rot. People who were overlooked, people who tried. But the top was full of rot, entitlement, ego, and zero empathy. At noon, she took the elevator to the 37th floor, where the big offices sat behind frosted glass and thick carpets. The top-floor executives rarely acknowledged her, unless they needed a delivery signed or an extra bottle of sparkling water. She was the front desk girl to them, same as to everyone else, but not today. Today she walked past them without knocking and straight into the corner office, once reserved for her grandfather. She closed the door behind her and locked it. The scent of old cigars and leather still clung to the space. It felt like a ghost lived there. A powerful one. Alina sat behind the massive mahogany desk and opened her laptop. A hidden interface booted up, one only accessible with a custom key code known by two people, her and her late grandfather. From this dashboard, she could see everything. Employee records, department budgets, promotion recommendations, HR complaints, performance reviews, even security footage, all filed under neat tabs, all within reach. She clicked into the Incidents folder. Over 200 complaints had been logged in the past year. Most were buried, ignored, or quietly deleted before reaching HR's public reports. She scrolled through them, heart tightening. Marketing manager mocked junior associate's speech impediment in front of peers. Director made racially insensitive joke during meeting, no witnesses willing to testify. A receptionist reported being called monster face by unknown co-worker. Complaint dismissed as hearsay. That one made her pause. It was hers. She'd filed it anonymously 8 months ago, just to test the system. It never even made it. Past the assistant's desk. Flagged unsubstantiated and forgotten. She closed the tab. So that's how it was. Still. Alina leaned back in the chair, fingers steepled, staring at the skyline. Her heartbeat was calm. Too calm. On her phone, a countdown reminder pinged. 3 days until ceremony. She smiled. She'd invited the entire company, from interns to execs. Even board members were flying in. But the real performance wouldn't be what people wore or what speeches were given. It would be who smiled, who groaned, who pretended to care, and who dared to fake respect. It was a test, and everyone would be graded. Back downstairs, Darren was pacing in the HR wing, leaning into the director's office with that over-familiar energy of someone who thought he owned the place. "I'm just saying," he said, loud enough for others to hear. "Someone should find out who approved this event. It's kind of ridiculous, right? No warning? And formal wear? What is this? Prom?" The HR director, a tired woman named Lorraine, gave him a tight-lipped smile. "It came from the top, Darren. Higher than me." "Well, I hope they're not wasting people's time. Some of us have real work to do." Alina watched him. Through the corner security cam feed, sipping her tea, she could already imagine his face on Friday when the curtains dropped, when the monster took the stage. When the real owner stood in front of them all and asked, politely, sweetly, dangerously, "Do you remember what you said about me?" By Wednesday, the fear started to taste real. It was in the way people dressed, not casual anymore, but a little sharper, like they were expecting to be watched. It was in the way meetings dragged out, voices lowered, people making guesses, and pretending they had insider info, but no one did. That's what scared them, the silence. Even the VPs, the ones who usually barked orders with coffee breath and half-baked strategy, had gone quiet. Most of them assumed the event had something to do with the board. A surprise audit, maybe. Or one of those company culture resets where they hired an expensive consultant to tell everyone they needed to do better, while the worst people in the building kept their corner offices. They didn't know this reset wasn't about better slogans or team building. It was about truth, and Alina was almost done collecting hers. By now she had everything she needed: anonymous surveys, flagged emails, witness statements that people thought went nowhere. All of it backed up, time-stamped and ready for Friday's reveal. She spent her day between the front desk and her office upstairs, moving like a ghost through both worlds. At the front, she still played her role: polite, soft-spoken, invisible. She handed out security badges, nodded at passing executives, even complimented the very people who mocked her behind her back. They didn't even flinch anymore. They were so used to her silence, so used to the idea that she was nobody. They didn't recognize the danger standing right in front of them. That afternoon, Darren strutted through the lobby like he owned it. He was wearing a new watch, something expensive, gold-plated, probably bought with the bonus he stole credit for. 2 junior associates followed behind him like little shadows. He paused at her desk. "Well, look at you," he said, smiling like he was doing charity. "You ready for the big event, Monster Face?" The 2 juniors froze. One of them gave a nervous chuckle. The other looked down, ashamed but too afraid to speak. Alina blinked slowly. "I'll be there." Darren leaned in, lowering his voice. "Try not to scare the board members." He laughed and walked off. Neither of the juniors said a word, just hurried behind him like scared dogs. Alina didn't move for a moment. She just sat there, letting the sting settle in her bones. Then she stood up, walked to the security desk and handed the guard a small envelope. "Please make sure this reaches Darren Cole's desk by end of day." The guard nodded, too distracted by his phone to question it. Inside the envelope was a single piece of paper. No name, no signature, just 2 lines typed in sharp black font. "Remember what you said, we do." She wasn't petty, not really. But she wanted the message clear. The walls were closing in, and Darren wasn't the only one getting a warning. That same day, nearly a dozen employees found similar notes in their mail slots or taped to their monitors. Some were more direct. "Your words are on record, they will be heard." Others more subtle. "We are what we pretend not to see." People started panicking. By Thursday, HR was flooded with quiet visits. Employees asking questions like, "Are we being reviewed? And is this legal? And should I be worried?" Lorraine, the HR director, did her best to keep things calm, but even she was starting to feel it. That cold dread that comes when you realize something big is coming and no one's telling you what it is. She sent out a last-minute company-wide email. "Thursday evening. Reminder, Friday's appreciation ceremony is intended to celebrate all team members. Please come dressed appropriately, arrive on time and be prepared for a few surprises. Let's make it memorable." Memorable. Oh, it would be. By the time Friday morning rolled around, Alina had barely slept. She didn't need to. Her mind was electric. Her heart was steel. And her plan, polished like a blade. She wore a navy blue pantsuit, tailored, sleek, powerful, hair pinned up. No makeup to hide the birthmark, not today. Today, it wasn't a shameful mark. It was a signature. When she walked into the building at 7:02 a.m., the janitor nodded at her like usual. He was one of the few who treated her kindly, without pity or fear. She gave him a warm smile and slipped him a small envelope. "Open this." "Later," she said. He looked surprised but took it. By 10 a.m. the auditorium was prepped. Rows of chairs, gold and white banners, lights hung overhead. A massive screen framed the back of the stage. No podium, no assigned seating, just quiet tension thick enough to taste. The invite list was full. Everyone was expected. Darren, Lorraine, the VPs, the smug middle managers, the quiet interns. Even the IT guy who never left his basement cubicle. Every corner of the company was represented. At 11:55 a.m. the room was packed. People checked their watches. Phones were silenced. Whispers rose, and then at exactly noon the lights dimmed. A single spotlight hit the stage. The screen flickered on, and slowly a voice spoke, calm, confident, and utterly unfamiliar to them all. "Good afternoon," the voice said. "Thank you for coming. Today is not about celebration, it's about revelation." Murmurs, confusion, eyes squinting at the stage, trying to see who was speaking, and then the screen changed, and the first image appeared, a complaint, time-stamped, with Darren's name on it, and the title, Verbal Harassment Toward Receptionist. "Unaddressed," gasps echoed. Alina was still off stage, standing in the shadows. But her heart beat steady. They were about to learn who they'd really been working for, and who they had truly disrespected all along. For a moment, no one moved. The screen lingered on the complaint. Darren's name, the timestamp, and the summary. It was undeniable. Then came the whispers. Quick, hushed, frantic. "That's real. Oh my God, wait. That's about her." In the front row, Darren sat frozen. His smile had collapsed into a strained smirk, but his eyes were racing. He looked around like the room might offer an exit, or at least a hint of what the hell was happening. But all he found were confused faces and a camera pointed straight at the stage. The screen changed again. Case number 112. Racial joke in marketing meeting. Suppressed. A video clip began to play. Grainy. Recorded on someone's phone. Time-stamped. From 6 months ago. It showed a senior marketing director laughing after mocking a client's name in a racist accent. Several co-workers nervously chuckled. One woman shifted uncomfortably but didn't say anything. The video cut. The room went silent. Then another file loaded. And another. Each one an incident, a name, a complaint that was never addressed. Alina was still off stage, standing behind the curtain, watching it all unfold through a gap. Her fingers rested against the velvet drape, steady and sure. Behind her, the tech crew she'd personally vetted followed her cues. None of them knew her full identity, only that she'd hired them for a very special corporate intervention. One of the crew members turned to her. "You ready?" She nodded. On screen, the words appeared. "You've heard enough from them. Now hear from me." The lights shifted. The spotlight moved stage left. Alina stepped into it, and the silence that followed was unlike anything that building had ever held. She didn't smile, didn't wave. She stood tall in her navy blue suit, hands at her sides, and let them see her clearly. The scar, the birthmark, the same one they'd laughed at, whispered about, called monstrous. It was all there, visible, unashamed, powerful, and behind her, the screen changed again. Alina Rose Bellevue, owner and majority shareholder CEO. Bellevue Industries, the gasp that rolled through the audience was sharp and collective. Someone choked on their breath. Someone else whispered, "No way." Darren actually stood up, blinking like he'd seen a ghost. Alina stepped forward, her voice calm but cold. "Some of you know me as the receptionist," she began. "The girl you avoided in the elevator, the woman you called names when you thought no one was listening." No one dared interrupt. She continued, each word like a hammer hitting stone. "But before that, I was the silent heir to this company. My grandfather, Charles Bellevue, made me promise one thing before he passed. Don't take the throne until you know who deserves to be in your court." She paused, eyes scanning the crowd. Some looked away. Others stared, wide-eyed and pale. "So I waited," she said. "I watched. I listened. I documented everything. The praise, the cruelty, the fake smiles, the abuse swept under the rug." The screen behind her flipped through images and emails as she spoke. Anonymized quotes from internal chats. Cruel nicknames like Monster Face, Scarred Freak, and Witch. I kept records of the ones who showed kindness, who treated everyone with respect, not just when it was easy, but when it was hard. I saw who defended others, and I saw who laughed the loudest when the joke was cruel. Darren suddenly found his voice. "This is insane," he shouted. "You've been spying on us? You set us up." Alina turned her gaze to him. Calm, steady. "I gave you rope," she said softly. You chose what to do with it. He looked around, seeking backup, but no one came to his defense, not the board members, not Lorraine from HR, not even the juniors who used to trail behind him like lost puppies. Alina walked toward the front of the stage now. Let me make this very clear. Bellevue Industries is under new management, the kind that doesn't tolerate harassment, racism, elitism, or unchecked egos. Another name flashed on the screen, a VP who misused funds. Then another, a manager caught coercing interns into unpaid overtime. The list went on. These individuals, she said, motioning to the screen, are no longer employed here. Their terminations are effective immediately. Security is waiting at the exits. There was a shuffle near the back. Someone stood. Someone else followed. One by one, those named left the room, red-faced, furious, or quietly defeated. Alina didn't flinch. She turned back to the rest. For those of you who stayed silent, who witnessed cruelty but said nothing, this is your chance to change. The next chapter of this company will not be built on fear or silence. It will be built on integrity, respect, and accountability. A few brave people started clapping, just a few at first, then more, then most. It wasn't thunderous, not yet, but it was real, and Darren, he stood there trembling, fists clenched, his whole career unraveling before his eyes. You won't get away with this, he muttered, too quiet for anyone but her to hear. Alina leaned in just enough for him. To feel her breath, I already did, she said, then turned her back on him. She didn't need applause. She didn't need forgiveness. She had her truth, and the whole damn room had seen it. When the ceremony ended, no one left right away. People sat still, stuck somewhere between shock and awe. A few whispered in tight circles, while others just stared blankly at the stage, trying to process what had just unfolded. Some were sweating, some trembling, some already reaching for their phones like they were waking up from a nightmare. Alina stepped off stage without a word. She didn't linger for applause or acknowledgement. This wasn't a performance, this was truth, served ice cold. The board members had stayed mostly silent throughout, but as she exited, one of them, a sharp-eyed woman named Evelyn Marks, rose from her seat and quietly followed her backstage. Alina, Evelyn said, catching up. Alina turned, calm as ever. I had no idea, Evelyn said, voice low. Your grandfather, he always said you'd shake the foundations. I didn't expect this, but I respect it. Alina gave a small nod. It had to be done. You'll have resistance, Evelyn warned. I know, but if you keep this fires, they won't stand a chance. Evelyn held out her hand. Alina took it, and that was that. A silent shift of power, sealed in solidarity. Back in the main building, word spread fast. By the time Alina returned to her small desk at the front, the desk she'd sat behind for nearly 2 years, people couldn't even meet her eyes. Those who used to ignore her now offered nervous smiles, small nods or fake apologies she didn't need or want. She sat for one last hour, quietly collecting her things. No announcement, no grand farewell, just a slow, quiet goodbye to the version of herself they thought they knew. The background noise, the joke, the monster face. Lorraine from HR approached near the end of the day. She wasn't crying, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She looked like someone who'd just realized her job title didn't protect her anymore. I didn't know it was you, Lorraine said softly. Alina didn't look up. You didn't need to know who I was. You just needed to do your job. I thought I was. I followed protocol. I filed what I could. No, Alina interrupted calmly. You filed what was convenient and ignored what wasn't. Lorraine swallowed hard. I'm sorry, she whispered. Alina stood. Her voice never rose above normal. You're not sorry, you're scared. That hit like a slap. But Lorraine didn't argue. She just stepped back, defeated. As Alina walked to the elevator, her things in a single box, the employees parted like waves. No one spoke. No one dared. Only one person approached her directly. The janitor, Mr. Kellen. He offered a gentle smile and handed her a small note. Folded, handwritten. She opened it after the doors closed. It read, Some of us saw you. Always. Ted, thank you for reminding them who's boss. Alina smiled. Someone had always been watching the right way. Upstairs on the top floor, her new office waited, sleek, quiet, unapologetically hers. She placed the note on her desk first, then the scarred nameplate she used to keep hidden in her drawer, A.R. Bellevue. She sat down, exhaled, and allowed herself one moment of peace, but it didn't last long, because downstairs, Darren Cole wasn't done. He'd stormed back into his office after the ceremony like a man on fire. Threw papers, cursed at interns, and screamed at Lorraine over the phone. "They can't do this," he spat. "I built this division. I made this place run. That freak, she's bluffing. She doesn't have the board." But Lorraine's voice, on the other end, was small. "She is the board now, Darren. She owns over 60%. He slammed the phone down so hard the plastic cracked. For hours he stayed in his office, pacing, stewing, trying to figure out his next move. He still had allies, still had secrets, and if he couldn't win back control, he'd settle for ruining hers. And he had just the thing. In a locked drawer he kept files on everyone, even her. From her first weeks at the company when she made one mistake on payroll, emails, CCTV footage, even a doctored HR memo that painted her as unfit to lead. He'd saved it all. Because Darren didn't build power, he blackmailed it. By the end of the day he had a planned smear campaign, leaked files, anonymous threats to the board, even a lawsuit if necessary. He just needed time. But what he didn't know was that Alina already knew about the drawer, and what he didn't know was that someone on the inside had flipped on him weeks ago. That night Alina received a message from her private investigator. "He's making a move. The documents are real, but they're weak. His threats are empty. But I'd advise acting before he gets desperate." She typed back, "Handle it." And with that the game was fully on because Darren thought the war had just begun. He didn't realize he'd already lost. Darren's home office was a mess. Papers scattered, laptop humming with half-finished files, a bottle of expensive whiskey half gone. He hadn't slept much. Too many thoughts, too much paranoia. He had sent the first batch of files anonymously to a tabloid. Gossip-level stuff, exaggerated HR violations, edited emails, vague claims that Alina had used deception to infiltrate the company. Grinned when they responded within an hour. "We'll run it, send us more." That night he slept with a sick sense of victory curling in his gut. But the next morning, his smile cracked. His phone buzzed non-stop, but not with congratulations. With headlines only, not the ones he expected. The front page of the same tabloid he'd contacted read, "CEO with a scar but no skeletons, the rise of Alina Bellevue." Below was a flattering photo of her, a quote from a whistleblower, and an entire feature story, one that painted her as a hidden guardian of corporate justice, exposing the toxicity inside Bellevue Industries. Her scar, mentioned once, respectfully, as a mark of resilience. Darren's hands shook. He opened the email thread. His files were there, but they were never published because someone had beat him to it. Someone had fed the media her story before he ever had the chance to twist it. He cursed out loud. Then a second headline dropped. Executive Darren Cole under internal investigation for workplace harassment, misuse of funds. His blood ran cold. How? He scrambled back to his computer, trying to figure out what was going on, clicking through private folders, backups, everything. But one by one, the files refused to open. Then the screen blinked. A black window. Text appeared. "Backups don't save you from consequences, Darren. You kept receipts, so did we." He slammed his fists on the desk. Security breach, or worse, an inside leak. He called his lawyer, shouting, "They hacked me. This is war." But even his lawyer sounded distant. "Darren, it's not hacking if someone inside gave her access. Someone you trusted. You might want to stop talking," his voice cracked. "You're dropping me? I'm advising you to settle down. This is spiraling." That's when he realized it. He wasn't spiraling. He was being buried, piece by piece. Floor. By floor, things shifted back at the office. A full audit was launched. People were called into meetings, confidential, quiet, efficient. Each department cleaned from the inside out, and those who had coasted on fear, they started slipping. Lorraine, from HR, resigned 2 days later. Publicly retired, but privately pushed out with a clean severance and a silence clause. 2 directors were fired for hiding safety violations in the factory wing, another for falsifying product numbers to inflate sales. Everywhere Darren once had allies and closed doors, cold shoulders, Alina didn't need to shout anymore. She had people doing it for her now, people who believed in her, people who realized she'd been the only one watching, listening, caring, when no one else did. And the best part? She never touched Darren directly. She didn't need to. She just pulled one thread after another until his whole world came undone. By the end of the week, he was placed on indefinite leave pending investigation. His company car repossessed, access card deactivated. His office cleared out without warning. He returned to find his name removed from the door. Security handed him a box, already packed. Inside it, on top of his ruined reputation, was a note. Handwritten. No signature. You tried to bury me with lies. I built my empire from truth. The monster. He stared at it for a long time, not angry, not shocked, just hollow, because he finally understood something he should have seen a long time ago. Alina wasn't just playing to win. She was changing. The game. And the people who mocked her. They were now the cautionary tale. Upstairs, Alina watched the security feed of Darren being escorted out. She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just leaned back, hands folded, and let herself feel the peace that came after years of humiliation. She hadn't just survived them. She'd dismantled them, but something still sat heavy in her chest, because justice wasn't the end. There was still the question of what now, and the answer would come from a place she hadn't looked at in years, her past. There were still people to confront, a history to reclaim, and a final truth she hadn't shared with anyone, not even Evelyn. Because, while the world now saw her as a powerhouse, there was one person out there who still saw her as broken, someone she once trusted, someone who abandoned her when she needed them most, and if she wanted to fully reclaim herself, she had to go back and face the pain she'd buried deep. 2 weeks had passed. Bellevue Industries was reborn, leaner, cleaner, and louder about integrity than it had ever dared to be. The air buzzed differently now. Employees walked straighter, HR actually functioned, and the culture of silence was gone. Alina was everywhere. Interviews, panels, magazines, but not for glamour, always for the message. Don't mistake a scar for weakness. But even as the world applauded, she remained unsatisfied, because there was one door left unopened, one ghost left unspoken, and that ghost had a name, Eli. He wasn't just someone from her past. He was the one from her past, the only person who saw her after the accident, who held her hand in the hospital when her skin was still raw, when she couldn't look in a mirror without sobbing. The one who promised he didn't care about the scar, who kissed it once, then vanished, no message, no goodbye, just disappeared. She'd buried it, told herself he couldn't handle the weight. Maybe he was young, maybe he was weak. But now. She needed to know, because closure wasn't a gift. It was something you took for yourself. She found him easily. Her PI handed over the address without flinching. Quiet life, works at a tech startup, married, 2 kids, normal. She sat in her car outside his home for a long time. It was modest, warm-looking, a tricycle in the yard, a wind chime on the porch. For a second she hesitated. Then, no, not today. She stepped out, walked up, knocked. It took a few seconds, and then there he was. Same eyes, same nervous smile, a little older, a little slower. "Alina," he said, stunned. She nodded once. "Hey." He stepped out onto the porch, closed the door behind him. "I didn't think I'd ever see you again," he said, voice shaky. "I know," she said. "That's why I came." They stood in silence. Years collapsed between them. "I followed your story," he said finally. "You're incredible." She didn't smile. "You left." He sighed. "I was scared. You promised you wouldn't. I was 23. You were hurting. I didn't know how to be strong. I never needed you to be strong," she said, "just to stay." He looked down. "I'm sorry. Too late for sorry," she said. "But not too late for honesty. Why'd you really disappear?" His jaw tightened. "Because I hated myself for loving you, and still feeling afraid when I looked at your face." That stung, he continued, his voice cracking. Not because you were ugly. Not because you were broken, but because I was. I saw your strength and it made me feel small. She nodded slowly. You know what the worst part is? She said. You were the only person I forgave before I had any power. And you broke it. I know, he whispered. I just needed to hear it, she said. That it wasn't about me. It wasn't, he said. You were always light. I couldn't handle being the shadow. She turned then. No tears, no rage, just peace. Well, she said softly, I became the storm. She walked away without looking back. That night she stood in front of her mirror again. No makeup, no lighting tricks. Just her and her reflection. The scar still stretched across her cheek and jaw. Twisted, faded, permanent. She smiled at it. Thank you, she whispered, for not healing the way they wanted, because the world needed reminders that beauty didn't always wear a smooth face. Sometimes it wore battle lines. 6 months later, Bellevue Industries launched its new mentorship program, a nationwide scholarship fund, reserved specifically for women who had been judged, dismissed, or discriminated against because of how they looked. Burn survivors, disabled women, plus-size women, trans women, everyone who was ever told, you don't fit. Here, the name of the program, Monster Making Opportunities Now. So they erase rejection. Critics tried to slam it. Too aggressive, too political, too ugly. But the response from the people who needed it, overwhelming, because for the first time their pain wasn't being pitied, it was being powered. And at the front of every press release, every billboard, every campaign, Alina's face, scar and all, not photoshopped, not shadowed, full light, full defiance, full truth. The final scene wasn't loud. It was a quiet cafe a year later, where she sat with Evelyn Marks and a few young interns, laughing about her first week as the invisible front desk girl. One of the interns leaned in and whispered, Did you really scare Darren into therapy? She chuckled. I didn't scare him. The truth did, and they all laughed. Evelyn sipped her tea. You changed everything. Alina shrugged. Nah, I just reminded them what fear really looks like. The intern blinked. What's that? She looked the girl dead in the eyes, a woman who knows her worth. Then she stood. The bill was already paid. The sky outside was golden, and as she walked out, people didn't look away anymore. They looked up at the woman with the scar who refused to shrink, who turned her shame into strategy, her pain into purpose, and her insult into a damn empire. They used to call her Monster Face. Now, they called her Boss.